Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. It's such a beautiful day here in Berlin, and it's a pleasure to have you here. And such a beautiful day here. As Jürgen said, I work for IO, the company behind AdBlock Plus, which is the most popular ad blocker in the world. But IO is not just about ad blocking. We build solutions to try and help the web be more sustainable. I'm a community manager there. And before we jump into the next topics, I'd like to just briefly tell you a little bit about me. I'm originally from São Paulo, Brazil, and I've been here in Germany for the past 3 years. And I have a background in sustainability science and policy. Now, some of you may be wondering, just like many of my friends, what the heck are you doing in a tech company with your degree or with ad blocking? So maybe today I'm able to make some sense out of it, and then we can connect the dots after the talk. So like this month, we're going to talk about commitment, and I think that's a very scary word in every possible sense, but it's very important that we take that to make progress in whatever we want in life. And I'd like to talk about how and why committing to a sustainable web beyond ad revenue is important. Now, some of you maybe think that, or like this is an intuitive topic. Some of you may not know, and I will try to explain that in the next 10 minutes or so. And if not, later on you can actually ask me any questions you want. And I'd like to do that in 3 ways. First of all, I wanted to establish the fact that users are the ones in control of the experience of the internet, and that's how it should be. People should be in control of whatever happens behind the screen of their devices or any equipment. And we may discuss this later, but probably there's no argument that is going to convince me the opposite. Secondly, I'd like to raise some issues with the broken ad revenue model and how this user movement, this ad blocking consumer movement, has taken us already to a better place. And then last but not least, I'm not just here to talk about ad blocking. I'd like to talk about commitment and how we can, maybe in other words, how we can do a more constructive ad blocking. So maybe let's build a concept around what is a sustainable web. We're used to listen to sustainability as topics related to renewable energy, problems related to poverty, recycling, and all that kind of stuff. But what is a sustainable web? Well, I think a sustainable web is when you actually have freedom to choose, that you have freedom to create, that you have an internet that's neutral, that there's not corporations directing the information that we are consuming on the web. That's the sustainable web I'd like to see, at least. So maybe let's start with the problems here. What went wrong? First of all, the internet, 90% of the websites are financed by advertising. But what is wrong? What went wrong there? Maybe the slide is quite self-explanatory. It's an extreme. It's an extremely complex system, the online advertising system. I hope you can still hear me. Whereas like in print, it's super easy for marketers to print an ad and that's it. And even before then, it was super easy to publish an ad. Now we have a bunch of actors wanting a share between the publisher and the consumer. And it's no surprise that creators are having a hard time financing their content, and also several different problems with privacy, data collection, fake news or misinformation or whatever you may call it, and journalism with less research. So these are the problems that are coming from a system that is financed by advertising. But let's have a look in the history of things. How did we get to where we are? So the first online ad was created in 1994. And then more and more formats of advertising were created since then. Don't take me wrong, I don't want to criticize the initial era of online advertising, because probably the pop-ups didn't sound like a bad idea back then. And then, hello? No? Can you hear me well? Okay.
When it starts again, you can use it.
Okay, sounds good. We'll
to
try.
stop it.
All right, very good. Yeah, so then more and more annoying ads started to be created. And then what happens 4 years later? 1998, users start to ignore advertising online. And how do we know that? Well, there was a research done by the University of Rice in the United States where a term called banner blindness was coined, where researchers did eye tracking. So they realized that actually the users were focusing on the content they were searching for and ignoring the ads. What happens next? 4 years later, the first ad blocker was created in 2002. So the conclusion is, not only people are ignoring the ads, but they are proactively looking to block them. Where does that take us? Obviously, publishers are going to make less money with it. You as a brand, if people are not paying attention to you, if people are proactively looking to block that, then you don't really have so much more value. So let's say you have 3 ads in a website and you make 100 euros off of it in 1 month. And then the next month you make 50 euros. What is the solution for it? Well, 3 plus 3, 6, bingo, we have 100 euros back again. So let's double the amount of ads on a website. And that's when the initial vicious cycle starts. But not only we're facing a vicious cycle, but we're in the descending spiral, is what I would call. 2 companies are controlling the whole ad infrastructure online, namely Facebook and Google, what we call duopolio. And so 77% of the ad spending are going to one of these companies. And that's very dangerous. That's limiting creativity. I don't have anything against these companies, but it's the problem that it's just 2 companies controlling all of this. So it's a lot of power for these companies. What happens? Now, this is the current state of ad blocking. We have more than 600 million people blocking ads. That is on mobile and also desktop. And this is growing in a very fast pace. In 2014, we had 300 million people blocking ads. And now we reached to that level. According to the Interactive Advertising Bureau, known as IAB, the organ that helps with the standards of advertising online, 25% of users of the internet are using an ad blocker, so 1/4 of the internet population. But what happens, what drives actually people to download an ad blocker? I think this is a very obvious reason is because it's intrusive, it's annoying. And then on top of like the speed that can be 50% faster when you don't have ads on a website. And then you have the problem of malvertising, which is when an ad looks perfectly like an ad, but it's infected with malware. And that has grown in 2016, 132% of malware on the entire internet. And then you have the problem with the trackers, right? People care about privacy, and that's also growing a lot. And then last but not least, and I wanted to bring this up because often times people don't actually know that this is what's happening. So data consumption. Ads are actually taking data from you. So, and I, like he was saying, I was in Brazil, and especially this is the reason number 1 where countries in Asia and the Pacific download an ad blocker, and also now hopefully South America, because people have limited data plans there. And they're starting to realize, hey, this is coming from my pocket. there was a very interesting research done by the New York Times and their groups of newspaper, and they did a comparison with the costs to load ads and the costs to load the actual content. And if you look at the first example, Boston.com, you'll see that out of 40 cents of dollars, 32 cents is just to load the ads and 8 cents is to load the content. Clearly, there is something wrong with the system. It is entirely up to you guys to decide whether you want to have privacy, if you want to have security, if you want to save your money, and if you want to have peace of mind. So we should have choices. And then again, back to the topic on how we can commit to a sustainable internet, how we can do that. So looking from the angle of revenue, we have a few alternatives out there. And so paywalls, Patreon, and donation buttons. Paywalls, I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's when a website restricts the access of the user for the content. And normally that happens and you can pay a subscription fee or you pay a fee to actually have access to the content. But this is working mainly for websites that are bigger brands and not so well with the smaller and medium websites. And then you have the Patreon model, which I find it cool. People can actually make money with it. But a lot of creators complain because they have to do a lot of self-promotion. Sometimes they have to participate on seminars, on conferences, and things like that. And in the end, creators just want to create. And then we have the donations buttons that have been in the market for already 15 years or so. Sometimes websites implement that. Sometimes when they do, it's rare that users would use it. And a successful case and an exception of the rule is Wikipedia. But my question is, are these sustainable solutions? I have to confess that I like to see solutions outside of the advertising world, but these are working for very specific cases. So we need to think differently. We need, and from the scenario of the internet, a good solution would be a decentralized solution. We need to think of a universal solution that works for people that actually know that content needs to be financed and trust that. And then that's why I want to also take the time to tell you a little bit about Flatter, which is a really cool project of ours. And it works as an automatic micropayment system. It's a browser extension. And Flatter comes to bring value between content and consumption. So basically it works as, and we've developed an algorithm that calculates the time you spend on a website and the interaction and attention you give to it. So basically from the contributor side, it's a subscription model. You invest €3 per month minimum. And then over the period of 30 days, that money is redistributed to the websites that you consume the most. Of course, users are always in control. You can enable and disable that whenever you want. And that's a way that we found to empower users. It's about the power in the hands of many and not in the hands of few. But then how about commitment beyond revenue? How we can do better, like how individually at work or whatever, take control of your privacy. I think this is something we can try to do, even though we're not going to be able to do it everywhere, of course. I don't know, for example, if you're a fan of Google, if you like using Google, you have to comply with their privacy standards, of course. But it's important that you know where you're stepping in, because we use a lot of free and convenient platforms, and we don't actually know what's happening behind that. So it's a matter of awareness and consciousness. And then we have, and these points are all based in the first slide that I spoke about, the issues that we're facing as a society. And then the second point is mostly related to misinformation and fake news. There is no easy solution for that. And I think it's a very complex topic. But there are a few things that we can do to try and improve that. And one of them is to stay away from the major social media platforms to access news. Because when you click on links, they're making money out of it. And there are smart algorithms that are learning how you behave on social media, so they are, of course, then showing links that are related to how you behave as a person. And then we have to, of course, be careful with ads. And I'm not just talking about you individually. If you work also in a company that also creates ads, it's important that we do that responsibly, that we think about the user experience. There are a bunch of things out there that we can find, programs, initiatives. We also have an initiative called Acceptable Ads that is a set of criteria that we established based on research we did with our users, so that advertising is a little bit more responsible, and we encourage the creation of better ads. It's not that ads are bad, but it went to a really wrong path. So this is my 2 cents of commitment to have a much better and sustainable internet. So let's try to do this together and to have a more open space. And I'd like to leave you with a quote. A decision is made with the mind, a commitment is made with the heart. So if we can make a decision and to commit with it would be very important. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.